have another Time Space Visualiser interview for you now. Best known for playing PC Tony Stamp in The Bill, but we also know him for a few Doctor Who stories, it's fair to say. Let me welcome Cole OBE. Graham, how are you?
Thank you, Jason. I'm really good. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for the introduction. And hello, everybody. Cool. This is fantastic.
Well, this is unusual. I'm used to, I would much prefer to have you on stage and do a one-to-one personalised interview with you, but times are forcing us to do these things in a technological manner. How are things for you? Are you safe in lockdown?
Yeah, we're okay, thank you. And bless you, I must just thank Fantom Events and yourself for putting this together. It's a fantastic way of keeping in touch with everyone. Yeah, we're okay here. I actually volunteered as a community responder. So I'm phoning people through the day, making sure they're all right, so those with post-traumatic stress and that kind of stuff. But that fills my day. But it's lovely. But we can't complain about the weather, can we? It's been amazing.
No, it has been absolutely gorgeous. And like yourself, I've probably only been straying about as far as the garden, so I've kind of quite enjoyed that. So that's not been too bad either. So we're going to have a bit of a whistle-stop tour through some of what makes Graham tick, hopefully, over the next sort of 20, 30 minutes or so. Indulge me and tell me where it all started for you.
Well, I always wanted to be an actor. I was 8. And I used to go to Saturday morning cinema. You have to explain the next two things probably. For a sixpence, for you very young people, you could go to Saturday morning cinema, watch a big movie and a B movie, which would be the Jack Hawkins type thing, the old black and whites, in which we serve that kind of stuff. But I just loved it. And I wanted to create the atmosphere that those films did, and all of my peers that sat around me. I wanted to do that. I wanted to create those sort of emotions. And so really at school, everything was planned to do that. And you've heard my story many times, Jason, so I will tell you again. I was only good at 2 things at school, going to and coming home. The rest was pretty mundane for me. Although English was my subject that I love, English and sport. And if you played sport at the time I was at school, you got a great sort of report at the end of the year, so it kind of didn't matter too much academically. But I love books, I love reading. And so really, all of my life was planning to become an actor. My dad wanted me to do something sensible, so very quickly, you have to come to my one-man show if you want to hear the whole story. I got into orthopedics, as you do, in hospital, and I was just trying out acts, and of course the poor souls that were there got broken arms and legs, they couldn't go anywhere, they got to listen to me. And so I'd work out whether this line works or not. And the thing is with children as well, are the great things. I'd be messing around, and then I would have done the reduction while they were laughing, and then I just had to plaster them up, and away they merrily went. But always my plan was to become an actor. And when I was 21, just over 21, I said to Dad, okay, I've done this 4 years and I've got all the qualifications. Can I please now go and be an actor? And of course he said, yeah, okay. So when it goes horribly wrong, you've got something to fall back on. Thanks, Dad. That's the confidence you want to hear. And so really, my life from 1974 was just entertainment, and bless the business has been so ever since. I went into variety, first of all, as a chorus boy with Fantom Events. Worked with anybody and everyone, Les Dawson, just everybody that was a top comic at the time. If you could imagine me thin with lots of black hair, that was me, and I would sing with the girls. I would front the girl dancers, about 18 of them, in all the big numbers, the beginning and end of the shows and the middle of the shows. But then Fantom Events and their team would pull me out to go and actually feed the comics. So I had the most wonderful experience in my early 20s of feeding the best names in the business, or standing on stage and watching them work. And as I was going around the country, I would ask the theatre administrators, and remember, I hadn't got a drama school, so I'd ask the administrators if I could audition for a musical and then maybe get a chance at a play or something. And listen, they did that. And I then got into repertory theatre, so for 12 years roughly, I was doing firstly weekly rep, which is a story in itself. Learning a play a week was mad. And then it went into fortnightly rep, but I would then be able to stay on, and I would actually do musicals and 2 or 3 plays in 3 or 4 months. So it was the most wonderful experience.
And if I'm right, didn't some of your early rep, weren't you in Swansea for some of your early rep?
There you see, you went straight into the accent then.
Well, that's right. It came out there, I think, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I did 7 rep seasons in Swansea and 4 pantomimes. It's time I went back. I followed Ronnie and Ryan They've been the comics down in Swansea, big names. And I had to go in there and sort of fill those boots with Kenny Smiles was the comic. And we had a great time together. John Chilvers, of course, was running the theatre at the time, and we had a magnificent. But going there and doing those plays was wonderful, and the diversity that you had. I mean, the musicals obviously were pretty staid and set, but I got to play every gambit, and it's there I learnt my love of comedy. So I did a lot of Neil Simon plays, not only there, but there was probably at the time 7 or 8 really good reps around the country, and that would fill up my year. So I think, bless them, on Stampers, which is the website run by Glenn Quigley, who's amazing. He's a bit like yourself, an orthopedic, that's what I used to do, an authority on my life. And he sort of tells me that it's about 168 characters that I played on stage or something to this moment in time, plus all the TV stuff. So, I've been mightily blessed. I really have. It was, but what an experience. And I think the sadness is our youngsters don't get the chance. Bearing in mind, though, when I was doing the reps, we would do Pygmalion and shows like that. And I can remember in Wolsey at the theatre there, we were doing Anne of Green Gables. I was engaged to be a singer in Anne of Green Gables. And during the day, we were doing the Seagull on a school's tour. If you can imagine anything more diverse, and getting your brain in 2.5 hours out of Seagull and then into musical theatre was extraordinary. But as I say, what an experience.
And have you preferred your musical theatre strand of performing over and above your comedy? Which one stands out for you? I think it's musical theatre, but
do you know the thing really for me, and it doesn't happen too much in this country, in America they really embrace it and encourage their performance. Here, and certainly in the early days, they wanted you to specialize in something. You're either going to be a Shakespearean actor, or you're going to be a television actor, or you're going to be a film actor. And I find that really boring. I wanted to do it all. And even when I got the part of Bill, which I'm sure you'll come on to, I was still doing theatre even then, because you've got to keep the brain active. But also, and I think many people cited it, I played Tony Stamp. I wasn't Tony Stamp, and I'm not Tony Stamp. And that's a big difference to sort of some of the soap actors, because when you meet them, you actually kind of think, where's the line? It's sort of like there's no difference. And to me, the fun for me is not being me.
As it shouldn't be. And in theatre, I think particularly you do get the chance for that complete escapism from your own personality to a degree, particularly when you're thrown in at the deep end. Where did your big break in musicals come around?
In actual fact, it was sort of quite and happened to a lot of us. It just happened gradually and naturally. I've been blessed with a really good voice, so I'm very, very lucky in that sense. So the diversity of doing Pilot in Jesus Christ Superstar to Cabaret, Ernst Lubin, Cabaret, I mean, right across the spectrum of musicals. And I do love that, but unfortunately, I've got the kind of brain I can only do it for a certain amount of time, and I get bored, and then I start sliding things in, which upsets everybody else that I'm on stage with, because they're not expecting it. So there's that kind. But you are absolutely right. The fun of it is the audience, and because when you do musical theatre, you're really aware the husband's been dragged there. He really would rather be anywhere else in the world than sat there. We've got some very beautiful girls and some very beautiful routines to sort of make him a bit happier. But over the 2 hours, you see them changing, and you get into their soul. And if you're playing the characters right, they want to participate. White Christmas was great fun at the Dominion Theatre. 2,500 people, just under 3,000 people we played to. And I played General Waverley, the first Englishman to play the American. They used to fly Americans over to play it. And it was just wonderful. And I had a ball. And he had 2 big speeches at the beginning and the end. And the end speech is why I do musical theatre. As he starts to say about the men that he left behind and the families that he'd met and his life. And just as he spoke, Jason, about a third of the way through a page and a half of dialogue, one sole violin came underneath. And even now, the hairs on my just stand up there. It was just the most beautiful, magical moment. And as you look out over 2,500 people, you see all these flashes of white. And of course, it's the handkerchiefs, because they're remembering the people that did go to war, of that generation. Alan Jones was playing the lead in that particular one. We used to argue quite a lot because he said that the women come to see him, they've come to see Tony Stamp. That's who they've come to see. And we had big arguments. We had such arguments about who they'd come to see. It was wonderful, absolutely.
And of course, the beauty of theatre is there's no one performance that's ever really the same as well. So you really can craft it as you go on each performance, can't you?
Yeah, we forget the lines at different places. It's basically what you're saying.
That's probably a polite way of saying it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I have hundreds of stories of it going wrong. But that's why people come to live theatre, because they see us dig the trench and how do we climb out of it. And that is the fun. It doesn't matter what you're doing. That is the fun of theatre. I mean, I've ruined some wonderful plays because the brain has decided to go somewhere else rather than where it's supposed to stay.
I hear that there was an interesting part in Jesus Christ Superstar at one point where you literally had to sing in the two parts, if I'm correct in what I've heard.
Oh yeah, well remembered. Yeah, well prompted. I played Pilot twice, and I love playing Pilot. It's beautiful. But I actually trained the voice down an octave and a half, so I could sing Caiaphas, the high priest. Oh, gentlemen, you know why we are here, and that is. And what happened? Well, we were in Swansea. I don't know. We might have been in Swansea actually on this occasion. I think we were in Swansea with the big scaffold set. And I was running back to my dressing room. I looked like Archbishop Macarius. I had all big black gear on. I've grown a big black thick beard. And I was on my way back to the dressing room, and the tenor phone. Graham Cole returned to stage. And you instantly, Jason, think, I've forgotten. I've come away too early. I've forgotten a cue. And you're running in your head. And I went to the scientist and says, Annas, the guy playing Annas, had run into one of the scaffold poles in the blackout, and he got a huge chunk the same shape as a scaffold pole end on his forehead. And so there's no way it's going on. Martin Yates was our musical director, and he came into the wings and said, well, okay, what about the understudy? The understudy, because he had no warning at all. He came down and he's just, I can't do it, I can't do it. And so bless him, Martin said, can you sing both parts? But if I can remember both parts, normally I just answer him. But if I can remember both parts. And so I did that. And Annas is high baritone. So I'm in Lord in every way. I mean, it was nuts. But actually in the audience, there was a Doily Cards scout, and he sort of pursued me for a couple of years to join them. And I was going, no, I won't join Doily Cards because I know they are fanatical. Now, I'm an actor who sings. I'm not, and I've worked with many people who've got perfect pitch, and they come to me and they go, well, halfway through that, you sing an A flat. Did I? Was it a good A flat? Yes. Well, there you are. Yes, but it wasn't supposed to be. Well, that's, So, but I think you have to play for your audience. That's the job. If the audience aren't enjoying themselves, if you're not taking them on a journey, what's the point? If you don't elicit any emotion in them, what's the point?
Indeed, absolutely agree with you. I'm an absolute lover of musical theatre. I'm enjoying at the moment because obviously the theatres are all closed down just at the moment. We're being spoiled quite a lot with National Theatre productions.
And so aren't they wonderful
on YouTube? Yeah. And I'm just loving Thursdays and Fridays at the moment. Amazing right now. But I do long and look forward to the days when we can get back to the theatre, because for me,
if I may sort of say this on behalf of my industry, please support us. You hear about everybody else, but you don't hear about the thousands of actors. I was amazed. I think it was Bashir, on BBC One, when this sort of whole thing last week was going on about people on a higher page, and they don't have to worry about going in for all the various benefits. And so, and those people will be footballers and actors. What? Where did you get that from? And maybe the Tom Cruises or whatever, but most of us are just jobbing actors. And the chance of getting onto it, and all of the kids that have just got the roles in the West End or are changing roles, have just got the split from going to chorus to the main. I just hope that my industry can recover. I mean, we will be the last to come back because obviously of the isolation. So I think theatres, I don't know about pubs and stuff, but certainly theatres will be one of the last. But one is also hoping that by the time we get there, and how well do you know me, that people will be so used to the utter rubbish that the TV are throwing at us, that they'll want to come to live theatre.
I've got to
Don't
be
mean
honest.
you're forced to watch it, though.
It's taking some acclimatizing to daytime TV, I think, whilst I'm trying to work through the day. So so we go from the whizzy delights of sort of musical theatre. I am going to drag us a little bit towards Doctor Who now, and you can't really put two singing parts in Jesus Christ Superstar up against a Marshman. Really, two very contrasting things here.
I was singing Inside the Rubber.
I'm sure you were.
Yeah.
How did Doctor Who come about for you?
Well, again, a bit like Delfont and Grade, the BBC at the time would have a whole pool of young actors. And most of the time when we work with directors in theatre, they're looking to either go into television or movies or whatever. And if they've liked your work and they've liked the way you work with them, then they give you a call. And I got a call, and you had to go up and audition for the BBC, and you then get into play sort of spear carriers in Shakespeare's and all that sort of thing, because it is deathly dull hanging around for all those hours while it's all going on. But during my time in theatre, I was very good at broadsword fighting, and I did a lot of training with broadsword fighting, and I love that physicality of theatre, and I brought that to all the characters really that I played. And really, the Doctor Who's came about because I'd also worked with Kenny Everett, with Kelly Monteith, doing quite a lot of comedy stuff. And when you're encased in rubber, as I was for the BBC far too many times for my own good, you do need some kind of an outlet. It's like doing a radio play. I swear to you, it is. Once they put that stuff on you, if you're a Cyberman or something like that, you know, we were one of the first of the Cybermen, you're in moon boots, a whole bodysuit, gloves. The helmet goes on last, and the back in the originals was held with 4 posi screws. So once you're in there, there's a little hole that they could lift up, a little bit of mesh they could lift up and shove a straw in. But anything else, any other bodily functions had to cease for that amount of time. And then once you hit the studio, I was boiling hot, but nobody spoke to you. You sort of stood in the corner just waiting for your cue. I had a little earpiece, a little mic. So that was quite cool. So I could hear the gallery and what they actually thought of the actors, which was fascinating for me. I love that. But again, you know, that's your job. You're there for. We would have gone for rehearsals, of course, you know, at Acton. But on the floor there'd just be tape down for where the cave entrance would be, or the door would be, or whatever. And for the Marshmen, as you mentioned, we knew we were going to go out to Black Park to shoot the big scenes. But in the studio, it was unbelievably hot. And Amy Robertson, one or two others, the designers on the Doctor Who, knew I was pretty patient. So they would call me in to try the rubber. And that was on a dry suit, which they stuck all the bits of rubber on, and the the mask and things. But it was pretty horrible in the studios. But in rehearsals, I was following Tom Baker around, and I won't remember the director, and you probably will. And they said, "Oh, for goodness sake, give Tom something to work to. Make it sound like a Marshman." And of course, in the script, there's nothing. It's just X, because it's all going to be put on by the technical boys later. So I thought, well, Marshman, when I'm in rubber, I've come from water. So I was sort of following this wonderful actor who I'd known playing Doctor Who for so long, sort of going, behind him in t-shirt and jeans. It was the most surreal experience. But bless him, you know, all the doctors were so wonderful. If you're playing those parts, they are wonderful to you.
I was going to say, what was Tom's reaction to that? I'd love to hear.
Well, you never really knew. Have you interviewed Tom?
I've not personally interviewed him, no, but he's certainly a man who will tell it like it is.
Yeah, you don't really know too much about what's going on inside. And of course, he's huge. You know, when he had the coat and the scarf and everything on, you know, he's pretty big. I don't know if you're going to talk about Melkur, you know, but when I played Melkur, I was something close to 7 foot tall in the outfit, and that was the only time he ever looked up to me when I was in that gear. But they're all very individualistic, you know, and they should be. I would love to have worked with David Tennant, and I never got the call. I wouldn't mind doing them now. I mean, my mate Bradley's leaving, isn't he?
He is. There's an opening for you.
Exactly. Well, you know, he's broken the mold. It's the older people. Get the older actors in there now. You know, maybe I could play a dad.
I think he's done I think actually Bradley's done an amazing job.
He has. He really has.
He's
really exciting. What he's going to go on to next is really exciting.
Yes, he has. I mean, he's left for a very good reason. But yeah, he was amazing in it.
Yeah.
Tom was a larger than life character, though. I mean, how was he on set? Did you find him easy enough to work with?
Yeah, it depended. I mean, it really did depend. I was working with worked for a executive producer once, and if you were going down to ask something, you'd say to his PA, "What's he in?" No, his gout's playing up, and you walked away. So you learn quite quickly if Tom was sort of feeling whatever was going on, and we won't go into his private life, but all that was going on at the time.
It was.
As a Doctor Who aficionado, as you are, I needed to say no more. I can just see your face.
Yes, it was. But it was also a difficult time for Tom because he wasn't in great health anyway as he came into the last season. So I think that whole sort of last season for him was a little bit of a struggle. He didn't really want to give the role up, I don't think, in all honesty. He was Doctor Who and is Doctor Who for so many of us. And I think he wanted to carry it on.
I think it's very, very difficult when a decision is made and you have to leave something, whether it's for medical reasons or I think that to decide that you come to a point. Well, I think David said that, didn't he? Where you come to a point, where do you go next? You know, what can I do with him now? Where can I take him any further? And I think that's very different to being forced to leave a role. And I think wherever I go to, the conventions I go to, everyone wants Tom to be there, bless him. You know, and he, as you say, I think he probably is the archetypal Doctor. You know, I did 7 Faces of, you know, with even William Hartnell back in technical terms, you know, and that was pretty amazing to be a part of that.
Even his voice now. I mean, I've seen him a few times in the last couple of years, and even his voice is still the same. It hasn't changed, and you know, he's still a presence whenever he walks in the room. So
that's because he does every second advert voice that you hear.
He's used his voice to good effect, it's fair to say. Marshmen, Melkur, Cybermen, which was the worst costume?
I think probably Melkur. Again, Amy Roberts designed that, and I went to the BBC Special Creative to be made up into. I think you've seen a photo of my face. I was going to try and put it on the back screen, but I didn't have time to do that for you guys. Otherwise, I would have done. But that was pretty uncomfortable. But they built him for me, so we knew we were going to be in moon boots. We knew that I wasn't sure exactly what they were, but they used plaster of Paris resin mix, so it's pretty solid, pretty sturdy. And as I said, and when I looked through the head, I looked through sort of halfway up his neck. And I had at the early days, I had buttons to work the eyes and that sort of stuff. Because originally they had it on wires, but of course you couldn't move, and I would be moving along this, and suddenly I'd be jolted back like a big dog and just decided to go in the opposite direction. But again, it's the technical things I love. It's talking to the directors saying, we want him to be menacing. You think, well, how can I be menacing? You know, what can I do inside this outfit that's going to make that work? And of course, to a lot of people, he was the Master's time machine. I was up against the TARDIS, you know, and his plan was to destroy the TARDIS. And as you probably know, for Big Fish Finish, I was able to do the voice of Melkur some 30 years or something after I played the output, 20 something years. And that was wonderful to create. That was just absolutely wonderful. That's horrible.
I mean, I got, over the last few weeks, actually, I seem to have interviewed quite a lot of people who were in Earthshock. I interviewed David Banks, Claire Clifford, and James Warwick just recently for our Time Space Visualiser events. And all roads at the moment for me seem to be leading back to Earthshock. But that's a story that they all talk about with such fondness. And it seems like it was a good, fun story to work on, particularly on set. And they were very... They were very reminiscent of talking about Beryl Reid as part of their reminiscing.
Yes, she liked boys. Is that the story you've heard?
Well, there was one or two stories. I'm not sure that was quite the one, but
well, maybe may I say, therefore, exclusively in my case, she liked boys.
Yes. Yes, I think David was probably being quite kind, I think, when he was reminiscing. But for sure, she was struggling a little bit with the techno babble, apparently.
Sure. Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Well, also, if you bear in mind, when we did the first early Cybermen, we had to be so precise with our weapons because they were going to technically put that on afterwards. It's not like the CGIs and stuff they can do now, where you know more or less exactly what's going to happen. And you'd have to be really precise with that stuff. And I like that. I like that precision. I love being directed. If you can get inside the director's head, that's fantastic. And if you can imagine having to create from paper what is going to be created on screen, bearing in mind your budget, really tough on Doctor Who, especially in the early days. At 5:30, I don't know if people have told you this before, but 5:30 all the lights used to go off. Because the unions had the power of that, you know. And if it wasn't finished by then, the director was in serious mire, because now that's going to extend the next day.
And Earthshock was a very technical story as well. There was lots going on. You had the reveal of the new Cybermen, and you had all the sort of scenes in the caves, which were, you know, they were full of pyrotechnics, and there was lots of things going on from a cave perspective there. And, you know, lots of bits out on scene and lots of everything going on. And the director of those stories, I'm sure, had quite a lot to sort of get through. Were you able to sort of work closely with them in trying to sort of make sure that, you know, we working closely with them for sort of movement?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think as well, what you really have to bear in mind is you've got the actors have got all the dialogue. That's who he's going to spend his time on. So very often you may have the second assistant director working with you guys quite a bit, but you've got to link it all in. So you've got to know where it's come from, where it's going to. People used to say, you know, why the hell are you walking around with a script? Well, because I've got to know the cues. I've got to know what's happening when I'm supposed to do what with whom. And then if you go to Marshmen, you know, Black Park, we were all there in our outfits. We've been in the studio, which was unbelievably boiling hot, out to Black Park and into the water, because we're going to do the wonderful scenes. You see them coming out of the water. And of course, they want you to walk in an unearthly way because you're not from Earth. And when we got into the water, it said, you know, okay, if you can all come up, you know, go down, count to 10. I think there was probably about 7 of us, 6 or 7 of us. And we all, of course, counted to 10 at different times. So we all sort of popping our heads up at different times, and he wanted it all synchronized, you know, like the swimmers. And I can remember coming out, because you can only stand in water for a certain amount of time. I remember coming out, and he was sort of doing his nuts to the first assistants and anyone around. And, you know, I said, well, what can we do? How can we help? He said, well, all we saw was 7 air-filled bums floating on the top. I said, well, it's because they're wetsuits. So, you know, that's gonna happen. The only thing we can do is weights. So they gave us stage weights, which we then went in, and then we did that wonderful. I can't think of, you know, where they were said about counting down 1 to 10. Mississippi, Mississippi 1, Mississippi 2, Mississippi 3, and then you're supposed to all come up at the same time. But of course, when we went into the water, we went under the water with the weights. You can't hear or see, and of course, we all start counting at different times. So that was really difficult. But I think what was driving him nuts more than anything else was the dry ice effect, which cost fortunes. And they set it across. We'd all get in and sort of be ready to go under. They set it across that. But of course, by the time we got, the wind had blown it's all day. So it was start again, boys. But that side of it, you know, when people say, why does it take so long? It also depends how many cameras they've got on you, how many cameras the director's allowed to have. And, you know, it's then how many shots to make it really, really work. And but I think Doctor Who audiences are utterly unique in their love of the baddies. Normally, you're sort of quite a long way down the list, aren't you? But the Doctor, whenever I've been to the conventions, it's been fantastic because the detail that they go into is just heartwarming and wonderful, because you know, you're inside that outfit. We're all actors. We're all still acting. You might not see our faces, but we are all still acting inside there. You know, it's. But I do honestly think Doctor Who audiences are amazing for that. Wonderful. I love meeting.
And multi-camera versus film, of course, is a different experience as well, isn't it? So when you're in studio and you've got sort of 4 or 5 cameras, you're out on location, it's 1 camera. Was there a preference for you?
It's totally different. I mean, you're absolutely right. It is utterly. Studios are our domain. That's where we live. That's, you know, when I'm walking around in theatres and I see people come on stage and we're doing all this, you know, what are you doing? What's the light? And you don't even notice it. You know, you don't even think about it. And that is the difference. I mean, when you're in studio, where it's controlled, you know what you're doing. You can go to the green room, have a drink, have a whatever. On location, that's not going to happen. And the chances are that the actors will have very nice Winnebagos or something like that to sit in, whereas we'll probably be in the bus, the catering bus, or something like that. Or indeed, continually with wardrobe, who've got the problem that all these rubber bits, as soon as they hit the water, are now coming off. So it's never easy for them. It's so difficult for them, and they're really sweet to you. They do come up with the water and all that sort of stuff, and release you whenever they can, so you can get a bit of fresh air. And there was one or two actors that actually got quite claustrophobic in the gear and just could not do it. So, and you wouldn't know that until you're sort of playing those characters for so long. But it's also that you sit around for hours and hours and hours. And in my early days on Doctor Who, you could park on Ariel Way outside my beloved BBC that is no longer there. I've got some words for the people that made that happen, seriously. But you used to park there. You used to park on Ariel Way. And I can remember going up to the canteen, and we had, I don't know what the story is, but the Doctor Who people, they had sort of these egghead things on at the time. And I was a Cyberman. And we got this call, if you're parked on Ariel Way, they're about to tow the cars away. So I sort of just was the helmet off and the gloves off and the boots, but went out in all the silver bit with the pack on and all that sort of thing to move my car. But there was one or two eggheads that went out as well that just terrified anybody that they passed on their way to move their car. It was just one. I don't know what those characters were called, but I'm sure there's many of you out there that do. They have these veins in their heads as well. But it's moments like that that just, life getting in the way is amazing.
I absolutely agree with you. It was an utter travesty when they turned the purpose of that building from what it is into what it is now. And it's lovely, don't get me wrong now, but that for me, I grew up and that's been such a part of my life, BBC Television Centre. And
absolutely
not BBC Television Centre anymore. And strangely, ITV broadcasts all their programmes from there now, it feels like.
Yeah, because it's got the biggest audience studio available in London, because now they've shut the bank, South Bank. And I probably went into BBC when I was 21. After my first summer season, I went in that building, and you go in there as a young performer, you sit in the dressing rooms, and you just think, who's been there before you? It's such a unique, the horseshoe that we walk all the way around and around and around in that building. And there'll be 8 or 9 other productions going on at the same time. And you actually just think to yourself, when I first heard it muted, they're going to take off. Yes, we should diversify. I can understand that. But 2 big things. London is our capital city, whether you like it or not, it is, and it will remain so. Whether you like that or not, it is, and it will be. So that's where it should be. But also, it's that fact of history. You can't go and build another building and think you're going to create history, and it hasn't, and it won't. It can't do that. And also, we were saying, because I knew all the newsreaders, all those guys, I won't mention their names, I might get into trouble, but they're all saying, this is ridiculous. They're going to post us up there, and then they're going to expect guest artists to come up and do a, God knows what, 3-hour, 4-hour journey for 6 minutes on a settee. It's just not going to happen. And of course it didn't. So everything now is broadcast, and we now go to our outside broadcast unit, wherever it is. And of course all the politicians, unless they happen to be there. I mean, if you're playing Manchester in the arena or something like that, then you will go to the interview, but not otherwise. And of course, again, as I like to blow out, if whenever I get the chance on behalf of actors, because they moved it up there, we now get the same fee as we would have got in London, but now we have to get ourselves up there, put ourselves in accommodation, and it all comes out of your fee. That is why so many of us go, no, that's just not even financially feasible for me to do that.
I called it cultural vandalism when they closed it down, and I meant it, and I still feel it today. And I got to go there actually a few weeks ago, and it was lovely to walk around there, but the heart and soul's been ripped out of it, and it's such a shame.
Yeah, they kept Studio 8, didn't they? Is it Studio 8 that they kept, and the rest have gone?
But if you think about and not just Doctor Who, but if you think about the cultural history of television programming that came out of that building, all through the years, the Morecambe and Wises, the Hancocks, where do you start? And the memories are too big, but it just didn't make any sense. So we'll leave that one there, because I could.
Well, can I just put a little add on that, is that, of course, I did 48 live house parties from that building, which was a Saturday night wonder to me. I loved every second of it. And going out, when you say about, you know, doing all the theatre, going out there, we'd stand on the 8 by Plinth, the doorbell ring, the door opens, we walked out, 20 million people live. That's why you do light entertainment and get yourself ready for that, because it was extraordinary, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
So we aren't going to get away without talking about him. You did all your Doctor Who's, and you've done all your theatre, and you've done all your musicals, and along comes PC Tony Stamp, and for 25 years you got to it looks like you got to have a hell of a lot of fun.
It was amazing, but let me tell you, I was in a musical, I think Jesus Christ Superstar, and Phil Grace came to direct us, and he was a feature editor at Thames, and it was he who said to me, ITV are thinking of doing this new series called The Bill. They've done a pilot. I think it'll be brilliant about it. Give Peter Gugine, give him a ring, and I'll tell him we're going to do that. And that is actually where Tony Stamp came from. I rang Peter Gugine. There was nothing at that moment in time, but bless him, he kept the name and gave me a call, and in we went. But again, I have to say, Jason, all that experience in theatre, all the broadsword fighting, what they wanted was an actor that could handle himself. And most people don't know, but if I would be in just after 6:30, 6:45 in the morning, I'd really pump him up with the weights, make him as big as I could make him. And he also ate quite a lot, as the character. He was the writers like to do that to me. It's so hard to act and eat, and I think they like that, and particularly sitting in a car, it's not easy. But again, it's like doing all of the Doctor Who's, like doing any other character. They said to me, "Why don't you play this very experienced upfront cop, area car driver, gunman? I mean, everything. He's creme de la creme of uniform cops." And you go, "I'd never played a policeman ever. In all the Agatha Christie's, I'm always the baddie. I've never been a nice person at all, really." So I went to Wilf Night. I'd done a couple of background stuff. So they bring you in, and then the writers would come and talk to you, and the producers come and talk to you, and they sort of like, "How do you feel about this stuff?" And I said to Wilf Knight, who was the police advisor, "Can I just get out? I don't know anything about it. Can I just go out with the guys?" He said, "Well, nobody's ever asked before." So, "Well, that's the only way I'm going to find out, isn't it? There's no point in reading it or whatever. I've got to know these guys." And so in my 25 years, you very kindly mentioned, I went out in the area car 2, 3, 4 times a year, always throughout my whole run on the show, just to be in the back, to go out with the guys and the girls, to know what's going on, to hear the gripes. So very often, you know, in the canteen, with the canteen humour, normally with Hollis, I would slide something in that only policemen would know, policemen and women would know, and nobody, because the writers would, nobody else would know, but I'd slide this, because I know the government's introducing this sort of thing, so I'd slide it in. And they really appreciated the fact of that. But what it did for me, the actors, of course, is that in its simplest terms, acting is mirror imaging. But if you don't know anything about that life, how's it going to happen? You know, I think there's so many shows you watch now, and you think, have you ever thought about this person you're playing? You know, baddies aren't all bad. The thing about baddies is there's a little edge to them, and that's what makes them interesting. That's why women like baddies. There's something about them. Why are they a baddie? Why did they go down that route? And that's the fun of it. And for Tony Stamp, the thing I loved about him was he wasn't married. When I met Cherry in 1974, when I red coated, which is where I really started my career, and so I'd always been with her. And now suddenly I've got a chance of playing a guy, and I can look at ladies' bums while they're walking down the street, because he does that. And so that was something that I loved, that freedom and the fact that he wasn't. But of course, what you then do is you then play on that. And a lot of my mail, fan mail, or his fan mail, I should say, was about him, you know, "I'll come around to have tea," you know, all that sort of stuff. And of course, like we were talking about White Christmas, you've got to know your audience. You've got to know where you're going to pitch in. I had all these fantastically good-looking guys around me that were cast for that reason. And I go, "Okay, I know exactly how to play it. Big, butch, can handle him. Someone runs at him with a pitchfork, someone comes at him with a knife, with a gun, he's your man. Woman cries in front of him, what do I do? And it opens up a whole new dimension. All this big butch nonsense where they're shouting at everyone, it's just dull. It is really dull. And I like the fact that they gave us.
Sorry. You got to drive all the fast cars as well.
Well, that's because when I was 14, I started driving go-karts at Rye House, and I love it. I love cars. I've always loved motor cars. I used to on a motorbike, but I love cars. And so when the bill came along, I was asked, because of Noel Edmonds, actually, when I was doing the house party, he liked cars, but he's going to tell me, if he sees this, he's a terrible driver. He wants to live, and if you want to live, you're never going to race cars, not successfully anyway. You haven't got to worry about that. It's all about the first bend. And so I did loads of training again for that. I've done banger racing, any reason to drive a car. And so when they said about Tony Stamp, the guys asked, I'd done a few episodes, and then we were going to go on to the 2 half hours, rather than the 1 hour segments that we're doing. And the execs came up and said, look, we're not sure about these cameras, we're not sure how this is going to work. No one's ever done this in the world before at the time limit we're going to have. Would you go out with a film crew and see? And of course, the boys didn't know then that I had a racing license. They knew I liked cars. So when they got in the back of the cars, well, what do you want to do? Well, let's go up the ramp of a multi-story car park. Okay, how fast? Oh, well, how fast? Well, go as fast as you like. Really? Yeah. And when I did it, you just saw them in the back of the car just go on, because they didn't know that I'd had all that training beforehand, and it was wonderful. But again, and I used to really emphasize it, I was training all the time. And that's the most important thing. So that if I was in a car, you saw Sierra 1 belting down the road. When we then did the interior stuff, it would be an estate version of that. But then I've now got the other Hollis or whoever it is beside me, the crew in the back, maybe the guest artist in the back behind me, and all the crew. And you've got to replicate what you did before, but not as fast. But I just love the stuff with the camera crew, with the guy behind me saying, well, okay, well, what do you want to do? We want to pick up the villain here, and as we go down the road, I want to pan around with him. Yeah, that's great. And again, it's that technical bit that I love, and when you can pull it off, it's fantastic. But you must train for that. And the guys all knew on set, if I saw a kid or a dog or someone on a bike, I would just abort, just stop the thing. It's videotape. We go back and we start again. It's not worth doing that. But other than that, all the car chases. I mean, there was one point on one chase that I did, and we're with wonderful Quinnans beside me. And we're supposed to be chasing the guy that we get told is an IRA, and he's got guns or bombs or whatever in the car. And you've got to stop him when we're doing this chase. It was one of the longest car chases ever recorded on British television. And Nick Gillard was the stunt ranger. And there was one point when we were somewhere near Peckham or somewhere on a new estate there, and there was a bridge, and the camera was on top of the bridge, and the bandit car went underneath, which was a Jag, and I went underneath. And the other side of the road, then we had to stop, but they wanted it as fast as we could go. 98, I was going underneath that bridge. And all you could hear on the other side, once we'd done the shot, it was because Ross Oglethorpe was a cameraman, and he had to pan, and because it was a concrete, it was throwing the iris out, so that we had to go that far so he could whip pan through and pick us up, and have us whip through and pick us up. So that's why we had to go that fast. But all you heard when we went back to watch the tape was we got underneath the bridge, and then you go, because we're trying to stop, because there's a main road just about 300 yards or 300 meters further ahead of us that we had to stop before we hit. So, but it was a wonderful experience again. And Nick Gillard was fantastic in that. Working with the best, if you work with the best, film stunt crews I work with all the time. If you work with the best, they make you look fantastic.
I read earlier on all the various things that happened to you throughout the 25 years. You had quite a twist and a turn, it's fair to say, through the years on the bill. What's your standout moment?
Do you know, that's really hard. That's really hard to say, because people always think that you'll go to the big dramatic scenes, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it's the guest artists. And because they would have to go into this moving ball, and many of us, the sort of the central characters, will be switching between units. So that director might only have us for 3 hours or something. We've got to complete these scenes. The car ones always, because they're so technically difficult to do. The guest artists I love. The fact that we are fighting, and when we get up we're absolutely pristine, and I'm always saying to the wardrobe, stop brushing me down, for God's sake, I just rolled in the mire with this guy, you know. And there was one scene where I had to eat loads and loads of donuts. In fact, I got through, I think this prop boy said it was about 18 donuts, but I didn't eat them all. I was only taking a mouthful, and then the sugar was all going down the staircase. And every time I got the wardrobe Billy would come up with his brush and go, well, it's supposed to be there. That is the whole point of this story. Is I get in the car, I've done the job, I get out, and when I get back to Sun Hill, the boss is looking at, what is that? Sorry. And that's the whole point of that storyline. There was one which Snap's birthday, and he gets locked in a house, and he can't get out by this nutty woman, and he can't get out of the house. You've got bars all over the windows and doors, and he can't get out there, and she goes to throw wine over his shirt, and then she offers to wash it for him. I mean, there's that stuff where it's just amazing. We used to put quite a lot of stories, you know, because when I was going out with the guys all the time, we put quite a lot of stories through, and our writers would sit in canteens and would get the storylines, and all that really would happen is that the Tipex plot will come out, they Tipex out the villain's name and put in the fictitious name. But there's little details that I like. There was no acting officer in the Met called Tony Stamp when I joined. There one transferred from Essex into the Met and then wish he hadn't, because he was a sergeant, and every time he tried to take parade, they were all going, what happened last night then, Sarge? What happened to that girl you were with? I love this stuff. But standout moments, I think, really are the quiet moments. You know, beautifully written for Stamp, even on his last day of playing him. For me, it was a wonderful storyline of a young girl that he tries to help, but her baby's really ill, and it's a lovely scene. And there's a great scene with Alec Walkinshaw at the end, and I'm sat on the bonnet of Sierra One for the last 9 games, a pig of a job in it. And you know, who cares? No one will remember me. And it's beautifully, poignantly written. And Alex and I, we did Holby City last year, and it was fantastic to work with him again. I was supposed to be having a chap who's has to have a new heart eventually, heart transplant. But he doesn't go in for that, doesn't he? And he's an antique student. Again, you know, Jason, they send you the script. Okay, I've got this sort of that guy in mind, you know, who's really brown mahogany colour. You know, I've got bouffanted hair and all that. So I sort of went down that route, and I played him awfully lovely. And the storyline was Alex's character, his best friend has been killed, and he's got all this stuff that's going, and his old records, and my antiques dealer knows all about them. And there's a beautiful scene at the end where he's saying to Alex, you know, look, you've got to let go. You've got to let all this go. He wouldn't want you to be like this. And I'm doing all this dramatic stuff, doing all the breathing, because he's supposed to have a new heart, doing all that stuff. I'm lifting the mask on and off. All the time, Alex Walkinshaw, remember, I'm in a gown. Alex Walkinshaw has got his hand under my gown, rubbing his hand up and down my leg while I'm delivering all this emotion. It's a beautiful, what an industry. It's just lovely.
You had too much fun, I feel, on that program.
Well, you know, one of the other things that a lot of the crews, my job is, you know, if I employ a plumber or electrician, I want them to come in, do the job. How much it's going to be worth is not going to happen again. My job is know what you're doing, come in and do it in the short space of time possible. Don't make people hang around waiting for you, all that nonsense. You know, all that bit about getting into character, you should have done that in your prep. You know, that's why they send you the script beforehand. Your job is to get out there and to do it, to take the audience along with you. I was talking to Trudy Goodwin the other day, bless her, and because they've both been really ill with this horrible disease, her and Kit Hauser. And I was talking to her, and she said, I'm feeling really down today. And I said, just remember, after 18 years, they gave us a love scene. She said, oh, yeah, I remember that. And I saw you, as I walked into the makeup room, you were sat there, our eyes met in the mirror as you were sitting there, and you just went, oh, God. And yeah. And I went over and I gave her the sloppiest, horriblest kiss I could imagine at 7:30 in the morning it was. I mean, it really was horrible. And I promised her the kiss would be better that night. We were going to meet at 7 o'clock on different units we got on to through the day. And when we met, and I reminded her, we went there to this most romantic scene, 18 years build up, about Ackland and Stapp to get together. Where did we do that wonderful intimate scene? Sutton, outside a pub, underneath the gents' toilet window. Yeah, it was horrific.
What can I say? What can I say? I'm assuming that this the sort of lockdown that we're in, it's affecting your ability to get out and do the one-man show. It's a shame. All I will say is I recommend anybody to come and see you in your one-man show. We did have a bit of it a few years back, but as soon as you're anywhere in the Nottingham area, I will be across to see you. For
Nottingham Theatre, one of the loveliest theatres in the country. I love playing Nottingham Theatre.
Beautiful. I actually really enjoy it myself. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit and reminisce and chat through quite a number of years there. But I think we've got a real feel for you there, Graham, I think, as it's come out throughout. I'd normally say clap, but I don't have enough. But all I will say is, Graham Cole, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for your time, and stay safe.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you very much, mate. As always, your interviews are always superb, easily done. And to all the Doctor Who fans, bless you. Thank you for your support. And when we're out of this, please come to live theatre. We'll be there for you. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.